Okay, well, welcome to Borum Energy Solution, Home Scale Wind Turbines and Towers Primer. And we already passed the halfway mark, and we're going for session number 7. So, what are we covering today? Today, we're talking about guy wires and potentially a little bit about the wind turbine, but it's mostly going to be about guy wires and anchors. Okay, so that's the topic today. So tower assembly, if you recall, last session we talked about how to identify the tower base location, how to identify the anchor's location, right? And we also showed all the steps required to assemble the tower horizontally. All right, so at the end of the day, last Wednesday, we had the tower horizontal with all the section poles, tab couplers, non-tab couplers, with the set screws and everything else. So it's ready to go for the next step. Okay, so I decided to start talking about anchors. The ones that we're going to talk about today are earth anchors, and the same thing, same principle applies to bedrock anchors that we'll cover towards the end of the sessions. But we can do anchors, earth anchors today. Now, for those of you who don't know who haven't seen earth anchors, this is what they kind of look like. All right, they come in different configuration. The one we use is called a 10-inch arrowhead anchor. So you can see here. Can you see my screen here, my mouse?
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. So you can see, think about it as a triangle. All right. It's a triangle. It meets, this is a company that makes them for the U.S. military. So it's pretty solid. All right. So it's 10-inch. It can go to 13,000 pounds of pull force. So it's pretty good. It comes with aircraft cable galvanized that's connected in the middle here to 2 holes. Okay. The cable ends with a thimble here. Okay. And finally, the arrowhead has a pin here. And we'll see. So, how does it work? Well, there's a cable end. And what Boron provides is a rod. It's a 6-footer rod with a hole in it that fits the OD or the other side of the pin. So that rod connects directly on the pin here. And that's a bit how we can push it down in the ground. Okay. So it's a bit more complicated, but that's the basic idea of it. Okay. So the first thing to do is, and you can see here from the diagram, it's useful if the arrowhead anchor here and the cable here is aligned with the resulting force of the guy wires, right? So whether we have 2 or 3 guy wires for each anchor, it's useful to know to put this in the approximately the same angle that the guy wires come down from the tower. Okay, so remember we do this to make it easy for anybody to do it without any specialized equipment. Some of you might be able to use an angle finder, but some homeowners don't have that. So what we did is we say you create a jig with paper or cardboard or something like that. And depending on the tower height, and then you can decide how wide that jig is, 3-inch to 4.5. It tells you what the B side needs to be based on your tower height. All right. So that gives you the jig to use to help make sure that by the time you start pounding the anchor into the ground, you've got the right resulting angle to the tower. Okay, so it's an easier way to do that. You can also do it with the angle finder. Okay, so the steps here for the anchor, and this to show that it's not very complicated. So you connect the rod, the 6-footer rod, to the earth anchor to the pin. So there's a pin here. Sorry, it's a pin here, and the rod will provide as a hole inside of it. Yeah, so the pin fits in. Right? It's a 1-inch rod, metal, steel. So you do that. So you place the point of the anchor where you mark the location for where the anchor needs to be. All right. And then you use the rod and you raise it slowly. Now you place the jig that you created here based on these parameters. So you place the jig under it, okay, until the rod is parallel with the longer side, angle side. Okay, so the rod will come this way if you want to, and the anchor rod will be here. On the anchor, earth anchor will be here. So you put your rod, and as soon as it's parallel to that, you've got the right angle. Okay, so place that, and basically at this point, you're ready to drive the earth anchor to the ground. That sounds probably a bit easier than what it could be. Now, at this point, we recommend you gently hit the top of the rod. Very gently. So what you want is you want that pin here, that point, to slowly go into the ground without moving that location, right? You want to keep this thing with the right angle and everything else. So slowly, just pound it slowly, and it goes in. It goes in. Okay. And then once it's in for a little while, a bit, then you can really go at it. And you want to drive it all the way down. And you have two choices, which I've used both of them, by the way. You can use a sledgehammer, and it is a very, very good exercise if that's what you're looking for. Or you can use a jackhammer, which is a bit more pleasant. All right. 7,500 pound sledgehammer. In fact, that's exactly the one I used. And you need an adapter here to put the rod in. It's a 1-inch rod, so it fits in the normal adapter. And there you go. You just pound it, and you need an extension cord. Most of them are electrical. So now, once you reach a certain point, and what you have is about 1 inch left of the ground. So the rod is 6-footer. So you're driving 5 and 11 inches down. All right. So about 1 inch left. I want to go less than that. Then it's time to remove the rod, and you do it by rotating it, because remember it's only a pin at the bottom. So you're rotating a little bit, and then you pull on it. Usually it comes out. No, I have to say I had a case somewhere north of Toronto a few years ago where it didn't come out. It was there, and I guess it will be there for the next 3,000 years or something like that. Anyways, things happen, but that's usually how it works. Okay. Now, so you saw that the earth anchor is a triangle, right? And the triangle goes down, right, in the same plane as the rod. So it's easy to put down. But if it stays in that position, it's not going to hold. It will not create enough pull resistance to do anything useful. So now what needs to be done is we need to rotate that earth anchor by 90 degrees. All right. And the reason it's easy to do is, remember I said that the cable, all right, and I'm going to go back for a second to show you this. The cable, all right, is attached to that triangle, all right, but it's off-centered. Okay, so it's off-centered towards the front. So when you pull on the cable now, right, it will create a moment and it will tip that earth anchor plate by 90 degrees. And then you have a lot more pull resistance capacity. Now, how do we do that? Well, we can have fun doing it. And the way we do it is, if you remember when you were young, or some people maybe not, we used to have a seesaw with children, right? And I put a picture of a seesaw here, all right? So you assemble a seesaw, all right? So basically you need a 2x4x8, two of them screwed together, so it's close to a 4x4, but cheaper. You put a big nail at one end, and you need a few wood logs or a piece of wood or whatever, 2 or 3. So it's nothing complicated. So you insert the nail into the thimble, which is at the end of the cable. So if you recall here, see that? There's a thimble here, right? So that cable now is all extended in the ground with the earth anchor. And then you place the wood logs close to the thimble, all right? And then you put the 2x4 on it. So the 2x4 is attached to the thimble, and there's a lever there created by the wood logs close to the thimble. And then this is the fun part. You get your colleagues to sit on the 2x4x8, opposite side of the nail, right? And then you'll see that just putting your weight and jumping up and down, then you'll see that the cable will move out of the ground by about a few inches. So when that happens, that tells you that now the earth anchors has flipped by about 90 degrees. And because of the surface that it creates in the ground, 90 degrees from the plane or from the cable like that, it creates a good surface, right, to hold, to create an anchor and resist a resistance, a pull of 13 plus thousand pounds. Okay, so having said all that, is a word of caution. If if something happens, it screws up and all that, let me tell you, there's no way to remove that earth anchor and reuse it unless you have a backhoe and you dig it up all the way to 5.5 or 6 feet deep. Okay, that's it. It's not made to be removed, right? That's an earth anchor. So kind of good news, bad news. Good news, it will never come out. Bad news, it will never come out if you have to take it out, unless you use a backhoe. Well, that's a little bit the earth anchor. Towards the end of the webinars, I'll provide a short summary based on that for bedrock anchors. It looks very similar. It's just different tools to install bedrock anchors. Okay, so let's talk about guy wires, power and anchor connections, right? So the guy wires connect one end on the tower, one end at the anchor. Okay, so first, as a client of Borum Energy Solution, you gotta get a spool of, in fact, they are galvanized aircraft cables, right? You got a spool of different size based on your tire height and all that. So you need to cut to length these cables, and basically this table, which is included in the installation manual, tells you the length of each table based on tire height and distance to the anchors. Okay, so you can figure it out. There we go. Okay. Now, some of the guy wires or the aircraft cables are 3/16, quarter, and 5/8. You can use a bolt cutter or grinder. My experience is bolt cutter worked okay for the thinner one. But when you get to 5/8 or even a quarter, I have to use a grinder. Now, some of you might be stronger than I am, but that's a bit my story for that. So here's the components that we're going to talk about. So it's important to know what they are. So you get spools of aircraft cables of different size. Okay, there's wire clips. You can see how they are here, right? And they made so that the cables, the two cables come in there and then you squeeze out of it. Timbals. Timbals is where you put your guy wire or aircraft cables around it so they don't pinch or like that's the right, it has the right surface and call it. Turnbuckle, very important. It helps adjust the tension in the guy wires during the installation. Shackle, all right, everybody knows what the shackle looks like in the pin. And this is, and all these are purchased, right? We don't make those things, they're pretty standard. But we make the equalizer plate. So the purpose of an equalizer plate is to equalize the load on from various guy wires. Okay, so I'll show you how that works. It works very well and it's very safe. Now, here's the very, very important thing is how to connect guy or aircraft cables, I guess, galvanized aircraft cable, which becomes guy wires. Okay, how do you connect them to timbals or to places where you have to connect them? There's a right way of doing it, and there's a wrong way of doing it. So I like to emphasize that we need to learn, make sure that we do it the right way. All right, so that the connections don't either get very loose or break off. All right. So when you do a connection, so here's your timbal here that we talk about. You can see how the aircraft cable guy wire goes around here, right? Okay, so when we do that, there's the live end, so that keeps going to where, and this is where it was cut, and it's called a dead end. Okay, well, I didn't invent these terms, but that's what it is. What is very, very important here is you see how that wire clip is positioned, right? The round part of it here, first connect and squeeze the dead end. Okay, and then the live end is under it. Okay, not the other way around, not the other way around. So if you look here at the bottom, this is what they call wrong way, where the round part of the wire clip connects first on the live end, and that's the wrong way of doing it. All right, so right way, round part of it is always on the dead end. Okay, so you put one at a certain distance here, and that's a function of the size of the aircraft cable. You put one in there, there's two nuts to tie it up. So you tie them up, hand tight to start with. Now, there's the challenging part of it. Then you put one here just by the turnbuckle. I say challenging because if you're using a 5/8 aircraft cable, they are very strong. So you'll need to squeeze those cable here to make sure that you can apply and put the wire clip. So you put one here, and now you have here, and then at the end, then you put a third one right roughly in the middle. Okay. So, now technically, they're going to tell you one wire clip will do the job. 2 is insurance policy. 3 is a premium, just in case. All right. So it's very safe. It's undone. So the right way after it's done looks exactly like this. Okay. Again, I'll insist the round part here touch first the dead end. Okay. And then you have the live end here. All right. So that is the right way of making a connection. All right. So the first thing to do is to connect the guy wires to the coupler. If you recall, there are two types of couplers on the boron energy solution tower system. There's coupler with tabs and couplers without tabs. So obviously we attach what would be called the guy wires to the couplers that have tabs. And to do that, we need a shackle with a pin, right? And that is where the thimble is, right? So for each tab, you need a shackle with a pin. You put the thimble, okay? Then you loop the guy wire or the aircraft cable and thimble and secure the cable with the wire clips. So here's an example here of the shackle, pin, guy wire, thimble, and the first wire clip right by the thimble. Here's what I do when I do an installation. I help somebody do an installation because these connections are very critical, right? Without the guy wires, the tower can unhole in the wheel. So they're very important. I usually ask, whether I do it or someone is doing it, I usually ask a colleague that did not work on this to come in and check the connection to those connection with guy wires. All right. It's a nice insurance policy, making sure that it's done correctly. The other thing is you can squeeze, I mean, you need to squeeze, and you can see here how the thimble squeeze the guy wire, right? Can you see it? All right, so squeeze. Most drills, and I say most drills, are unlikely to generate enough torque to squeeze where it needs to be, have enough torque. So the way we do it normally is we use a drill for the first pass, and it goes to the max of the drill. And then we use a ratchet, and we just torque it until you can't. You will not break the wire clips, and you will not break the guy wire. So you can squeeze until you cannot. And that tells you that at that point, you're good to go. Okay, so if you do that for each coupler, all right, so you have 3 tabs per coupler, so you need to do that 3 times for each coupler. And depending on the tower height, you may have 2 couplers or may have 3 couplers, all right? So you can do that, minimum 6 times, maximum 9 times, all right? Well, you get good at it after a while. Now, let's talk about how to connect to the anchor. So this is where, for the anchor, we use an equalizer plate. So in fact, it should say equalizer plates. There's 2 plates held together by 4 bolts of different size. So you can see there's 3 at the top, 7/16, 7/16, and 9/16. The 9/16 is always for the guy wire going to the top of the tower, and 7/16s are for the lower guy wires. Okay, and the 3/4 is the one that goes to that connects to the anchor. All right, so you take one of the plates, you put the bolts in, all right, from the bottom, so it's sits flat on the table, just like that. And then you have in the kit some turnbuckles, all right. The turnbuckles have eye nuts here, eyes, right? There's no opening, just eye. So you use those ends to put through those bolts. And then you put the second plate on, and you put the nylon nut on it. No need to tie them up too tight at this point in time. You want some slack. All right. And you secure with the nuts. So now, as I said, depending on your tower height, you may have 2 sets of guy wires per anchor, or 3, depending on tower height. Okay. So the idea here is that for each one of the loose hands of the turnbuckle, then you insert a thimble in each one of them. Do that by, removing the nut, pulling the bolt and putting it back through the thimble if you have to. Okay. And then now that you have a thimble, then you take the loose hand of the guy wire, right? That's coming out from the tower. And then you loop the aircraft cable on the thimble, secure with the wire clips. And I'm going to repeat myself here. I want a colleague to validate all that and make sure that it's torqued to the maximum that can be done. Okay? Don't have to worry, you won't break anything. Okay, so now you have once that's done, you've got, for each anchor, you've got each of the cables connected to the turnbuckles. And turnbuckles, for those who don't know, are used to adjust tension in the guy wire without having to redo the connection, right? So there's lots of slack in these things, so you can turn them to put some slack to the guy wires or tighten them up a little bit, to a certain extent. All right. Now, after that, here's the thing. This is the connection that will connect to the anchor. Well, if you recall, the anchor comes out with a cable, galvanized cable with a thimble. All right. So first you do here is that you have to you lose this up a little bit. You may have to remove the bolt. You put a thimble in it, and you put it back together. All right. So now you have a thimble here. Now you go to your anchor cable that comes on the ground. There's already a thimble there. So you put a shackle into that thimble. Okay. And then you put a thimble on that shackle. Okay. Once that's done, you measure the distance between the equalizer plate and the earth anchor cable, thimble. You measure that. You cut the aircraft cable to length. And now we know you pass through the thimble on the equalizer plate thimble here. All right. Pass the cable. You pass the cable to the thimble on the anchor cable. And you secure both hands with the wire clips. So now you've got, at the end of the day, you got aircraft cable guy wires connected securely to your tower, to the couplers, connected securely to the equalizer plate through turnbuckles, and you have the equalizer plate connected to the ground anchor, earth anchor cable. All right, so you're pretty much done with all this. So next steps, and we'll cover that next seminars, we have to install the gin pole so we can rotate the tower up. We'll do what's called test the tower. We do that before we attach the wind turbine, and then we'll show how to attach the wind turbine. Okay, that's 12 o'clock. That's the target.